Welcome to the Afghanistan Project Podcast. I'm Beth Bailey here with my co-host Michael Cook, and today we're excited to bring on Timothy Tito Torres, the Executive Director and Vice President of the Moral Compass Federation. Since 2005, Tito has served with the U.S. Army Rangers, UK Special Forces, and other special missions units, and he's deployed to Afghanistan 9 times. The Moral Compass Federation was formed in early 2022 as a way to bring together small evacuation groups that had sprung up in the aftermath of the U.S. withdrawal. Member organizations could join together under the umbrella of Moral Compass Federation to increase their power to do advocacy work and combine efforts for important projects. And in early 2023, Tito became the Federation's executive director and has overseen a lot of expansion of its mission set and growth within its members. So we're really excited to hear about that evolution today and to hear about what's in the future for the Federation. So Tito, thanks for joining us.
Beth, thanks for having me. I love this, and you guys have been doing great work.
Oh, we appreciate it. I guess give us some background about your just quick background, how you got involved with post-withdrawal Afghanistan operations.
Yeah, I mean, my story's like so many others in the community, in the evacuation community, and those who have kind of stood by our partners. August 2021, leading up to that, I had 2 interpreters that I was trying to get out for months, for years, with written letters and the SIV process. And we were not able to get them out. And, I was getting text messages August 14th, August 15th, and started to figure out where I can help them, where we can find the network to help get people out. And I called a friend of mine. I was in grad school during the time. I was studying in Germany when Kabul fell. And called her and said, I'm frustrated, I can't get them out. And she has resources and has some contacts. Said, Tito, I want to help. And that one phone call turned into, by the end of it, we had probably 20 to 30 volunteers that we were working with directly in an office in DC, all coming out of Georgetown and friends of the community. And we ended up enabling a lot of other organizations that you've all heard the names or you've interviewed a lot of the personalities. We decided early not to establish our own organization. It was better to enable and help other organizations and try to connect resources and try to connect people. That is where I tend to find I bring the most value is being that connector or coalition builder. And it was probably, like everybody has said here, 2 of the hardest weeks of my life. October of 2021 was the darkest I personally have ever been. It was the worst I've ever been of the aftermath, and it made me question all the deployments, all the time spent away, all the friends that I had lost in the war, and really made sure that I was going to stay committed and involved in this situation because there was a moral injury that occurred, and I had to stay involved, like so many other stories that we hear day in and day out.
I guess that we can just push right forward into that moral injury aspect because I think, we've heard from multiple angles of the guests we've had on have many of them have experienced moral injury, and some of them are veterans of the Afghanistan war. Some of them are veterans of HKIA who had to see and participate in operations that were completely against their moral compass. And then we have 2 evacuation volunteers who saw the federal government, not acting the way that they had their entire lives been told, that this is how the federal government works. And this is how, you ask for, you petition for assistance. The federal government says it's going to do one thing. And then in this case, it hasn't done many of the things it promised. And so we've just got this kind of massive moral injury crisis surrounding Afghanistan these days. And I know before we started, we were talking about Moral Compass Federation's new health initiative. Can you talk to us about what that is and how important that initiative is?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with moral injury and my own moral injury story of I had felt like I had processed a lot of the combat. I didn't feel like I had a lot of PTS. I felt like I had worked through a lot of the problems. Obviously, I still hurt from losing people and still had residual effects, but I had processed a lot of the war. And those 2 weeks, even though I wasn't on the ground, brought everything back and made me question really my entire life from 18 until I was 35 when Bull fell, um, of why I deployed every few months, why I left my family, why I lost some of my friends, and all the partners, and most of mine were Tejas or other words who, why did we build towards that? And one of the stories that I like to push back whenever I have the opportunity is this dialogue that the country was still in chaos towards the end. I was working late, closer to the fall in the country, and I got to see the city. I got to go to restaurants, and there were women going to school, and there were judges I was meeting, and it was very different time. It wasn't unicorn and rainbows. No one's going to pretend to tell you that, but it was not this chaotic country, and there was hope, and that's where I do think an entire generation that grew up with hope. I think the chapters aren't fully written, and the Afghanistan story is not fully done. There is a future that I will continue to advocate for. And so when you talk about the health initiatives program, when I came into Moral Compass Federation and took as executive director, we looked across the community, and all of us are tired and frustrated, um, but committed. The members within Moral Compass are some of the most committed people I've ever met in my life, who will run against the wall every single day until they get the win, and then they'll go find the next wall. Um, and it's really humbling to try to find opportunities where I can enable them to be successful. Because remember, all the member orgs within Moral Compass have their own mission. They sign on to what they want to sign on to, and we collaborate and work together because we choose to collaborate and work together. And all the organizations are doing amazing things day in and day out. And when I looked across the community, and we started to analyze how are we going to stay, because I can tell you Moral Compass isn't going anywhere. We have to take care of the people who are doing the work. We have to take care of the shepherds. We have to take care of the leaders, so we can stay in the fight and we can stay advocating for our partners. And so we took the same model of Moral Compasses, you know, exists to bring organizations together to collaborate, to share resources, to find ideas and to find solutions. And we took the same model and launched our health initiatives program August 29th. Um, and that takes the same model of bringing together organizations that tend to be from where you would think maybe different areas within the veteran ecosystem, um, but they share resources. They're in the same ecosystem. They share ideas, and we can start to come up with initiatives and collaboration and partnerships that are all mission focused and mission driven, to keep individuals in the fight to continue to work towards a better future in Afghanistan, getting our partners out, and resettlement. That's an area where we did expand over the last year. Originally, as you mentioned, Beth, we were focused on evacuations. We have expanded since then to be one of the organizations that is end to end, where we have experts within Moral Compass who understand every aspect from humanitarian aid that we still are providing within Afghanistan to evacuations that have slowed but are continuing to happen, and wins happen here and there, to getting them to the U.S. and resettlement, integration, and continuing the lives forward, because it doesn't stop when they get here. And we have to continue to work to integrate them as partners.
Mm-hmm. Tito, one thing you said is that the Afghan story is not written, and that's such a good point. And it brings me back to the gala that we were at a few weeks ago. And I remember Sean Ryan saying, the taste of freedom is contagious, right? And these people have tasted freedom. And that's such an important point. And I was just wondering if you could tell our listeners maybe a little bit more about the gala and what organizations participated.
Yeah, so Operation Allies Refuge Foundation, which is led by Joe Wad, and partnered with MCF, and we held a remembrance dinner August 29th. As we all know, OAR is doing some amazing things, and if you haven't found OAR, please go look them up and support everything they're doing. But we came together, and it worked out because we could say by chance, but it worked out that there was a hearing during the day with all the Gold Star families, and then we hosted the remembrance dinner that evening. And it was an emotional evening to be in that room. We had about 75 individuals that were on HKIA. So a lot of Marines in the room, a lot of soldiers, a lot of airmen. And then we had, I think, 9 Gold Star families in the room. And then you had a lot of people who have been involved in this space for a long time. And it was a chance to reflect on the 13, um, and think about all of those that were on HKIA that really were handed an impossible mission, and performed with honor and beautifully. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for that entire community, and hope to continue to advocate for their well-being, and making sure their story is told, making sure the truth is told. Something I want to, Beth, sorry, but something I want to, with moral injury, to make clear is there's not a lot of research, and moral injury has gained an understanding really in the last 5 years. There's more clinical research going on. There's more attention coming to it. A lot of the research prior to about 2016 was focused on end of care for Vietnam veterans, where you had a different type of population that was focused on different things. But one of the I think people misconstrue moral injury sometimes is that the regret of, and I'm going to use myself for example, so I don't speak for anybody else. Um, my moral injury is not related to the amount of firefights that I was in or anything I did on behalf of the country. I believed in what I was doing. I obviously war is very, it's not black and white. It never is. But I felt that I had done my duty of trying to do the right thing in Afghanistan and trying to do it honorably and trying to do it in a way that was building a better future for both Afghanistan and to protect U.S. interests. That is not any of the pain that I feel. So there's no regret of any of that. The pain that I feel is the loss of trust in institutions, watching the way Kabul fell, and being someone who was involved in some of the lead up to the fall, have an intricate knowledge of it didn't have to be this way. And I think you've heard that sentence a million different ways. We can sit and talk all day about policy of should we pull out, should we not pull out. No one's making that argument. That's not the part that's the problem. It's how we did it and what we did to our partners. And this not only affects Afghanistan, this affects all of our individuals, and especially our special operations, who are in 150 countries right now, who need their partners to succeed. The U.S. needs partners to succeed. It's a national policy problem as well. And so I'll leave it there. But I just wanted to be clear on where that moral injury comes from.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to hear. I was just on a call with some OAR Foundation individuals right after the gala, actually, to try to put together something about how incredible it felt to sit in that room with all of those people who've given so much. And I had mentioned to one of them, who I won't name because I haven't asked for permission, that it was hard to hear. For them, it is, I think, a different sense of moral injury, but it's all surrounding the way that this failed in such a catastrophic way and how many human beings were affected by it. But I said it was hard to hear that, something that was not a choice that those individuals made was impacting them mentally so greatly. And they said, well, it's almost like survivors of sexual abuse. Like, you did not ask for this. And like, there's more harm done to the person who is the victim or being forced to do the action than the person who, delivers that, the order from above, I guess, where there are just so many different, I think, levels or experiences of moral injury here. I think it's very difficult to hear. It's such a deep feeling. And we've been really privileged, I think, Michael, you and I, to hear so many individuals talk so candidly about those feelings. And it's just so important. And then there's the moral recovery. I know that OAR Foundation talks a lot about how they are going through moral recovery. And so for the HKIA veterans, it looks like, writing their stories so that the truth is preserved, even those hard parts, like talking about maybe things that they did that they don't feel proud of, or, helping refugee communities, things like that. What about What would you say, is there a moral recovery for the moral injury that you have experienced, Tito?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still personally going through, how I feel about how everything changed, and it made me question my entire service, um, which I was, very proud of up until then. There's the analytical view of that, that I do want veterans that listen to this to hear that, it wasn't all for naught. There was a taste of freedom, like you said, Michael. The story's not written, and I think a lot of us would do it, would go back, for the right reasons. But there's the emotional part that you can't ignore. That makes you question, why individuals gave up their entire youth or for this, and we all volunteered, to do this, and that's, I don't think that's the topic. The topic is, America has ideals, and that's what we sign up to sign on to, and we all have our creed, whether it's the Ranger Creed or different types of things that we really buy our soul into. That matters to us, and that matters to the community. That you have seen, I think, a historical movement of veterans and the veteran ecosystem, which includes civilians and spouses, who have answered a call, who stood up and said, "No, this isn't right. We're going to do something about it." And I think that's really powerful. And I'm looking forward to seeing what this community does, in the future, not just in Afghanistan, but leading, this country.
Oh gosh, it's amazing to watch. I mean, I know that a lot of people in the evacuation community lamented the onset of Ukraine operations because it took funds and attention away from Afghanistan. But to think about the number of groups that also were able to pivot and take the lessons that they learned in a very difficult way from Afghanistan and help humans in Ukraine very quickly. Same thing with Israel. I'm watching it right now. One of the groups that we actually had on the podcast is already headed into Israel to go help people get out. And there are really important things that have happened in the midst of all of the horrors that volunteers have been forced to witness. I think my first time actually covering evacuation work, somebody sent me just an entire file of snuff videos that had been made by the Taliban. And it was just such a immediate, like getting punched in the face, and it's like, well, I'm back to Afghanistan now, there was no, it's a horrible thing that people have been forced to see, because of the way that this all went down. But I don't know. I wanted to say one thing about the gala too. Jake Tapper ended things and talked about, there's that question of what was my service worth. And I have met and have spoken with so many veterans who are kind of grappling with that topic. And he said something that really resonated with me, but I am not a veteran. And so I want to get your take on this, Tito and Michael, since you guys both are. But he said that when you signed on and raised your hand, that was the importance of your mission, that you said, I will go do this, like, send me. What about that argument of everything mattered because you chose to do it? Does that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Jake, and let me tell you, I have so much respect for Jake Tapper and his ability to, he asks tough questions to the right people, and he has been a veteran advocate for over a decade, and he was very emotional, about given the opportunity to speak on August 29th. So, I just want to thank Jake Tapper, and I thought he did a great job. To your point, yes, but when you raise your right hand, there's a contract, and that's a two-way contract, in leadership, in certain institutions, and to ideals that you are signing on to. Again, I have no complaints. I signed up to go do things on behalf of the U.S. That put me in danger numerous times, and I said send me every time, and I don't regret any of those decisions. But there's a contract that goes both ways, and when that starts to lose its meaning, is where you start to see this problem throughout the veteran ecosystem, because they know what's right. And you talk about having to watch those films. Well, there's a whole ecosystem and a whole lot of not just veterans, civilians, to your point, that's why I say the veteran ecosystem, because it's kind of this group who understand the ground truth. And I don't think the ground truth is being listened to all the time in different circles, which I'm being careful to stay away from. But I think it's important, and that can go no matter which way you are politically. This is not a recent thing. This is a problem that's been building for a long time. And I like to sum it up with, when moral coin is spent too cheaply is when you have problems. And right now, this country is spending our moral coin, which really is our humans, our soldiers, our airmen, our Marines, too cheaply, and that is a problem.
What do you think it does to our fighting forces going forward?
I don't know if I'm the right person to speak on that and give a large opinion. I will tell you, I will answer your question this way. I have seen firsthand individuals who are leaving the military because of the Kabul evacuation. I think and I've seen individuals tell their children not to join because of the way that was handled, and the way the last few years have been handled. And that's a frustrating thing with something that is so good at heart and something that has done so many good things. This can't continue. I know the veteran community is frustrated that when you have the report of trust in the military used to score 30 points higher than everybody, used to be in the 80%, has dropped, I think, at least 18 points over the last 8 years. Is that because of the actions of individuals on the ground, or is that because of actions about the way the military is being used and portrayed?
Yeah, it's a fair point. So, this might be a good time to transition into just more about the Federation. Can you tell us a little bit about, who makes up the Federation and what different roles those organizations play?
Yeah, so we are now, with the Health Initiatives Program, we are now at 30 plus organizations within Moral Compass. We have an Afghanistan chairs that is focused on everything from, we have organizations, Project Exodus, who's still doing humanitarian aid. We help do humanitarian aid every month into Afghanistan, to all kinds of other organizations who are doing case management. You have TFRGO, and you have numerous organizations. I won't be able to name them all here, but then all the way to the resettlement side and integration, where React DC is an organization. So that just gives you a small taste where we can plug someone in all the way from the ground in Afghanistan to hopefully resettlement resources in the U.S. That's one side of where Moral Compass, and that is the main effort, and will always be the core of our guiding tenets. Our number one guiding tenet when we make decisions around moral injury is taking care of our partners. That's number one. We started up the Health Initiatives Program, which is another group of individuals. Now there are a lot of organizations that do both, that now have health initiatives of their own that we've pulled into this Health Initiatives Program, and we've brought in new organizations that bring in expertise in different regions. And so we have individuals that work on developing peer specialists, so there can be peer-to-peer counseling, which is something I think we need, especially in this community, in the evacuation community, because I think you have to have felt it and gone through some of it to understand what some of the people are going through, and how people are tired and frustrated, and those phone calls every day are emotional, and it takes a toll. And so we have, we have storytelling workshops through Hero's Journey. We have writing workshops. We have advocacy for non-traditional research for PTS or moral injury and TBI. And again, you can see how bringing those resources together, where you may not always see the connection, but when they're in a room, we need to connect. Oh, there's a project I want to work on, or that's the piece of the puzzle that I'm missing. And that's really the beauty of it. It's a collaborative organizations. The power of MCF is with the member organizations. That is who runs and drives everything. MCF as itself as an organization is here to enable that, and find ways to provide value in different ways. I mentioned our first guiding tenet, which really is our Afghanistan main effort, taking care of our partners. Our second is taking care of those that took care of this country. That includes, and the way we wrote it includes our veterans, our Gold Star, Blue Star families, and the civilians that took care of this country. And so that's where the health initiatives program comes in, where we're starting that. Our third is advocating for policy that prevents future moral injury or prevents future crisis that creates moral injury. We can get ahead of some of these if we start listening to ground truth and some of the understandings. And then the fourth is leadership, and that's not necessarily MCF leading. MCF is not an umbrella. MCF is an organization that people choose to collaborate in. The leadership is there's 52,000 VSOs in this country. If we can bring together 1% of that to collaborate, work together, and move in one direction, that's really powerful. And we saw that with the evacuation. So the leadership is really bringing together different leaders to lead in this veteran ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. And what's a VSO?
Veteran Service Organization.
Okay.
And that, to me, having done a lot of my writing prior to the withdrawal on, veteran suicide, which is just a horrendous epidemic that, when you're looking for research into what's going on, the VA is only publishing data from 3 years before basically any year. And so you have all these VSOs that are in that space that sometimes don't know each other exists and might be really, I can just see how that kind of effort could really help in that particular space in the future.
Well, I mean, here's a short-term example, right? I mean, we started seeing OAR Foundation on Instagram because their Instagram is a clinic on Instagram. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But I reached out to Joe Watt on LinkedIn because nobody had met him from this community. And we got a beer, and he didn't realize this ecosystem existed. Immediately found a home, immediately found some people who could not fully understand because we weren't on the ground. Our founder, Travis Peterson, was on the ground, who could understand that. And so brought him into this group. And then 8 months later, 1208 Foundation hosts a large event at Georgetown, where we were able to highlight, I think, 8 of our different organizations to speak at Georgetown on this topic. Joe Wad being one of them, among numerous other groups. I mean, that is the ecosystem kind of connection power of networks. And anybody that listens to your podcast doesn't need to be explained the power of network and networks, because that's how this entire thing happened, was that power of networks of putting people together. I call it the good dude network, because especially in crisis mode, how many times was the vetting through who it was, and it's no, he's a good dude, and that's what you had to go with for a little bit. And I mean dude and dudette. But the good dude network and bringing people together, that's really what I on a personal note live for. And I thank Travis for giving me the opportunity to be able to be a small contribution to Moral Compass.
Yeah. Was it a conscious decision to change kind of the orientation of what MCF would do, and, opening it up from this whole, from the very quick, because, I was there in the beginning reporting on first days of MCF, because you had all these evacuation groups and they were all small and nobody knew, why isn't humanitarian parole getting processed for people? Why are all these people who we know bad things are happening to them? Why can't they go to another country? Why can't all these people were duplicating efforts? And it made perfect sense at the time. And then obviously we get this more perfect understanding of this isn't going to be months. This is going to be years. And we have this resettlement. So was that a conscious decision on your part that now we need this kind of whole of Afghanistan approach rather than just this, let's quickly all work together to try to make the federal government do what it says it's going to do? Or am I oversimplifying?
No, I think it was a very conscious decision on our part. That it wasn't my decision. It was the member orgs, first started recognizing that resettlement, if we're going to finish the mission, you had to include resettlement. And that was the first step to starting to evolve. I would ask you this, Beth, if, you were reporting early, if those organizations would have stayed focused on the same mission, in the same way, what would we be doing now?
Just more aid for the 152,000 SIVs who are still left behind. And it would be, all those people who've been helped by CARE wouldn't be getting, they'd just be falling into the refugee programs that exist
Yeah,
that, yeah.
it's very, so I think from the founders of this organization, and including Travis and the member orgs, um, they all bring that, you know, civilian and military special operations. We're encompassing IC. Um, you got to evolve without losing your core mission,
Right.
or you're not going to be relevant. And if we didn't evolve, we're not going to be able to help our core mission, and that's be in the conversation to be able to expand SIV to some of the individuals that we want to help, to be able to advocate for our certain individuals that we want to be able to help, and through this process, we realized we had to expand that a little bit as well, and not just focus on special operations, but those who kind of built a life based on our partnerships over there, which include female judges and certain parties like that. I think that's important, and so it was a very deliberate decision to start to look at what was coming, and we continue to start to look at what is coming because we have there's a lot of I get reminded daily by that member orgs. We're not going anywhere. We're
Yeah.
not looking to fold soon. MCF, I think, is stronger than ever. I think the member orgs are doing amazing work, even with the roadblocks they have, and we're going to continue to advocate and stay in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love the health initiative. I think that that's exactly, it's kind of you have to put on your own oxygen mask before you put on somebody else's. You have to take care of those people who are doing this very difficult work. But can you talk about some of the other roadblocks that your orgs are still facing? Like, let's say the guys who are still working on humanitarian aid on the ground right now, what are their biggest challenges, would you say?
Yeah, I don't think I'm the one to go
No, not
into
you.
the nuance on the ground right now, because I don't want to misspeak or talk about anything that's out of date by a few days or a week. Um, I think those orgs are best to come on and talk about it. But I mean, everybody across the community has seen some of the roadblocks that we're still running into, problems that we're running into, in Pakistan with issues that are going over there right now. Um, there's there are contracts that are being awarded. There is, some movement I've seen that are hopefully coming over the months, and certain numbers have been promised over years that I think most of your listeners are probably aware of. And we just want to be in a position that we can help and influence that, and get the right people out, and both that and reunite families, and you know all the member orgs are experts on their specific arena, and we need to be in a position where we can influence that. And I think we are. We've had numerous. We get a lot of asks now from different stakeholders in our government, to both on the expertise and certain places and type of resources that they can provide. And I'm still hopeful and optimistic. I think we all have to be in this community, but I also acknowledge at the same time that there are a lot of people who are really frustrated, and I think we need to continue to push, but focus on a long term mentality, and that's where the health initiatives program is helping take care of people, so they can stay in the fight. If they need to step away for a few days, we have ways that we can do that, because we have to keep marching forward in all the different ways.
So Tito, I think thinking back to the OAR event, I think one part of that event that was so powerful is just everyone coming together. Some of it for the first time. Can you just talk about how powerful it was to have everybody in that room together?
Yeah, I mean that room was something that I hope that I'm able to remember for a long time and hold on to that feeling. We have so many hard times and so many losses, and when you do bring people together and you do have good evenings that you remember people correctly, and the gold stars, the feedback was they felt very heard and appreciated. You got to kind of take some of those wins as something beautiful in time that happened. And the people that wanted to be in the room was just amazing. I mean, the people that were reaching out to me or Joe saying, "Do you have a ticket left?" was just amazing. And some of the people I had to turn away, I felt horrible, but we filled up, and we left tons of room for especially the Marines from Joe's group that were on the ground, and I think they really got to enjoy the evening, to remember their comrades and the fallen correctly, and I don't think they always have gotten that chance to do that. I know based on my experience, things happen overseas. You get separated. You don't always get to make the funeral because you're still doing operations or you're still doing recovery. You don't always get your time to remember the fallen, and that was an opportunity for them to do that, and getting to be a small part to give them that really meant a lot to me. And as we all know, all the other individuals in the room that we've known through Signal for 2 years and never met in person. Wait, what's your handle? Wait, we've been talking for years. I think it's so many of your listeners have probably experienced that. It's good to meet in person and hug and just take a moment.
I think it was one of the most special things I've been involved in for the last 2 years, because it was, I've been quietly sitting in my house doing this work, and, yes, on Signal and email, and to see those people, like you said, face to face, and to give them a hug and tell them, how much it means, and just to talk about, shop talk, but also, isn't this amazing? To me, it was reinvigorating, and it reminded me that the people who have chosen to continue this work for 2 years, they're not going to stop doing this work. Which is why, to bring it full circle to the health initiative again, you have to kind of take those mental health breaks, because it is taxing, it is difficult. But watching all the guys from OAR Foundation seeing each other for the first time after sharing their really difficult stories, and their stories were really poignant to me, because I know how hard some of them fought trying to keep them inside because they weren't supposed to share them. They felt like they shouldn't be sharing them. Or like Mike Markland, faced investigations from CENTCOM for sharing videos, things like that. I mean, they've been through a lot together, along with, and for them, getting to meet the Golden Star families, the ones I talked to said that was really important for them. So it was just this huge, incredible experience. I did not stop talking about it to anybody who wanted to listen, which some people did not want to listen, but I just talked about it for forever. It was so special. I was very glad to be included, and it made me so excited for everything that you guys have coming ahead.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I would say, our member orgs have a lot of good things coming, a lot of initiatives. And keep an eye out for what they're doing as a federation, and Moral Compass Federations. We're going to stay in this fight, and our member orgs are amazing organizations and amazing human beings at the leadership down with all the organizations, and we're going to be around for a little bit.
There's a lot of work to be done, and I'm really excited to know that there is this whole approach now too, for all the people who are going to trickle in over the next few years. They're going to need all of that assistance, and I'm glad that there is an effort underway to bring all that under one umbrella. So thank you for everything you do, Tito. And we want to close out tonight. Michael and I are lucky we have some more stories to put at the end of our podcast. As most of our listeners know, we like to share a story from an Afghan at the end of every episode, talking about, what it was like to undergo almost 2 decades of war, the withdrawal, and then the return to Taliban rule in Afghanistan. So our story today comes from a man we're calling Niaz. We've changed his name for his protection, along with his brother's name. We're calling him Shakur. He was one of the Afghans who attempted to make his way to safety at H. Kaya by clinging to the side of a U.S. cargo plane. And unfortunately, he died. And his death was tragic for his family, who then fell onto the Taliban's radar because media from around the world were trying to interview them. And now this is Niaz's story about being abandoned by the people who promised to help him. So it's a long one. I'm going to do my best to read it without interruption. My little brother, Shakur, was born in 2003 in Kabul City. He did his preliminary studies in Malala School and progressed into high school, very eager to be the best football player that he could. He had a chance to play as a national player of Afghanistan from ages 11 to 16, but his aim was to serve his country and countrymen through study and sport. Unfortunately, our government was defeated by the Taliban, who had a bad background in the past in the way they'd governed. The Taliban is oppositional to human rights and civilization. They never want any improvements in sports, studies, culture, society, and so on. All these factors were disappointing to my brother and to all the people of Afghanistan. No one imagined that all of this would happen so very fast. Everyone was seeking prosperity to achieve and accomplish their wishes and to live in a democratic situation. So when Shakur became aware of a breakout at the airport, he made his way there to leave Afghanistan. During the crowd, there was a lot of rush, and Shakur lost his life. Shakur was the youngest of our family, and everyone loved him because he was sweet, kind, smart, and stylish. And our family hopes that after his bad accident, our family would be safe, but we lost our hopes. The news posted and published in many the news of his death was posted and published in many local and international media, which became a bad challenge for the Taliban, sorry, I'm losing my place here. We're going to have to, you're going to have to
keep rolling.
Scrub this. It's so, okay. I'm just going to skip to, okay. Many new local news reporters came to interview us about Shakur, but due to the unsuitable conditions and our fear of the Taliban, we rejected them. We shifted to another area where no one knew our address. It was difficult to move from a place where Shakur's memories still were, but we didn't have another option. In conclusion, we spoke with some TV and news groups and said that the Taliban were not our friends and that they were antisocial activists against women's rights, against freedom. We told them that the Taliban do not want improvements in sports, security, culture, society, and that we had lost all our hopes. And we asked that please would someone evacuate us if possible, because we were threatened from the Taliban. We looked forward to a positive response. After this incident and my brother's martyrdom, because my brother was a player of the Afghanistan national football team and a well-known figure, I at first did not mention the Taliban in my interviews. But in the second time, I didn't stop giving interviews, and the Taliban said that we will torture you and destroy you. It has been almost 2 years. My family and I have been living in hiding. We are always running away from the Taliban from one point to another in Kabul. In 2021, just a few weeks after the heartbreaking incident, I received a call from the Secretary General of the Afghanistan Football Federation. After greeting them, they told me that we had personally been supported by the world president of FIFA, and they wanted to help us get out of Afghanistan. They asked me for documents. I sent them all, and a few days later, we got visas from Canada that said to wait to the day of the flight to be transferred first to Qatar and then to Canada. Of course, all of my family were waiting for days for a call, but it never came. And when I searched, I found out that the Secretary General of the Afghanistan Football Federation had been transferred to Qatar with 200 other people, and they didn't bring us. After that, I tried very hard to email and leave messages everywhere. I sent several messages to the Canadian Department of Immigration, but no one answered or helped me. I sent emails to all members of the Canadian government, but no matter what I did, no one heard my voice, and they never answered me. I also sent messages to many media outlets to make my voice heard, but still, no one helped me. Someone help free us from Afghanistan, from the misery and problems and fear and terror, so that we can live again. Sincerely, Niaz. We are very grateful to Niaz for sharing the story about Shakur and his family, and we certainly wish that they can find their way to safety. Again, anybody who's listening who wants to share a story of their life during the war years or after, please send it with as many details as possible to our show address, which is the Afghanistan Project Podcast at gmail.com. And once again, Tito, thanks so much for talking about the work that Moral Compass Federation is able to be involved in with all these amazing organizations that are working with you. And we really wish you the best and that next year can be an even greater event to bring even more people together.
No, thank you, Beth. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Thanks to all our listeners for sharing their time and supporting the people of Afghanistan. So Tasha Kaur, and we hope to see you again soon.